Members of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's meeting of the South East Area Planning Committee. Agenda item 1 is Chairman's Notices. My name is Councillor Dewick and I'm Chairman of this committee. Members, be aware we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording it, and by being present in the meeting you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference the page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Bernard, do we have any?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have apologies for absence from Councillors Bassinger and Bell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 6th of April this year, which is to be found on pages 7 to 18. Agreed? Everybody happy? Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, disclosure of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware should the need arise throughout the meeting. Councillors, council schemes, all around the room.
Yes, in the room are a couple of architects who are taking part in item, I can't remember which item it was, I think it's item 8. But either way, I know them as family friends, but there's no pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyce?
Non-pecuniary interest, agenda item 5.
Councillor Stamp?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council, a statutory consultee on all planning related matters.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Fluker?
Thank you, Chairman. Sunnyside, Stoney Hills, Chairman. I'm acquainted with the agent.
Yes, I'm in the same position. Councillor Helm?
Item 5, non-pecuniary interest, like we sold solicitor last time about it. It's not pecuniary.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schemes?
So on item 7, I am a friend of the owner of the clubhouse. Non-pecuniary.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? No. Right, agenda item 5. It's the land to the rear of Red Lyons Farm, Burnham Road, Latchingdon. We originally looked at this application in December last year when the committee deferred it for further information. Since then and now the applicants have gone to appeal, so we cannot make a decision, but your views are requested so that the council can use those views at the appeal in whatever shape it may take. Councillor Boyce?
Chairman, I don't know whether I'm jumping in front of the presentation, but I think there's in my mind, there's a confusion of why it was deferred. The report says that it was deferred for the applicant to give us information. I believed that the deferral was for our officers to give us information, but I looked to Councillor Fluker to see.
I believe you are correct, Councillor Boyce, but my memory doesn't seem to last much longer than a fortnight, so going back 6 months, best part of, I really haven't got a clue. But I believe you are correct on that, yes. Any other members on this? Councillor Schemes?
Only that I just watched.
You leave the...
Only that I just watched the officers shaking their heads, so maybe they should have something to say on Mr. Boyce, Councillor Boyce's point.
Okay. Right.
Shall we go with the presentation first?
Yes, please.
So through you, Chairman, thank you. So the site is located to the south of Burnham Road, outside the settlement boundary of Latchingdon. Is Red Lyons Farm, and it comprises a mixed-use business park, which is an undesignated employment site. The current application relates to Unit 10, as you can see here, and on those plans. And these are some photographs of the site. We've been through all that, so I don't think there is a reason to revisit unless members want to see some of the photographs, and I can explain that further later on. So the application, the original application, was sought permission for the variation of condition 2 of the original permission, which was 14/00418/FUL, to alter the permitted working hours from 6 till 8 on Monday to Saturday. So the application was presented, as Councillor Dewick said, on the 8th of December to the South East Committee, and the committee deferred the item in order to give the applicant the opportunity to provide additional information and clarity in relation to various matters, including noise and the lawful use of the site. No further information in relation to the deferral reason was submitted by the agreed extended time period, and although a number of attempts were made by the council to engage with the applicant, no response was received confirming whether the additional information that we're expecting were going to be submitted. On the 5th of April this year, a letter was received from the Planning Inspectorate confirming the validity of an appeal for a non-determination in relation to this application. Based on that, the local planning authorities no longer have control over the determination of the application, as already stated, which will be determined by the Planning Inspectorate. However, the council's intention to either approve or refuse the application would be requested by the Planning Inspectorate as part of the appeal process. So the officer's report, the original officer's report, is included within Appendix A. Also, the updated report includes information in relation to enforcement matters on page 21. However, it should be noted that matters relevant to enforcement, either on the application side or the wider business park, are not considered to be a material consideration relevant to the determination of the current application. So for the reasons explained and previously discussed in the previous meeting, members are requested to agree whether we would be minded to approve the application as suggested by officers, subject to conditions which are included on pages 23 to 32 of the agenda, and also the additional condition 8 included into the members' update as it was submitted for the committee meeting on the 8th of December, securing the submission of a noise report assessing the combined noise emissions from all sources at the site and the wider area. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one person who was registered to speak in person, and that is an objector, Mr. David Bennett. Mr. Bennett, I believe you need to get to a microphone somewhere. You have 2 minutes to state your case at the time you start speaking, and at the end of the 2 minutes, your time is up. Thank you.
The original noise report associated to this application was a rehashed report that was submitted in a previous application to seek planning for an additional 20 units on this site. The Environmental Health Officer eventually raised an issue around the validity of the noise report and deemed it was not suitable for this application as it measured noise at the entrance of the business park and not the noise from the unit itself. This application for a garage auto repair business is now being considered against a backdrop of other approved applications that were approved with environmental health failing to highlight the same irrelevant noise report was used to add weight to those applications too. In the last meeting where this application was debated, the chairman cited that he was surprised by the hours afforded this business park as they are far and above anything else in Essex, and councillors also stated they wouldn't want to live next door to the business park with these operating hours. Mr. Lee stated that the application was for the unit itself and not the business occupying it. If this is the case and this unit can be for any business, how can environmental health determine there will be no impact on our well-being or request a condition for a noise report to be carried out for the current business who even the council believe are operating there in breach of planning control? Would this happen every time someone moved into the unit? If the site is a distribution site with lorries coming in from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. with a forklift operating 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, would this not impact us? Conditions haven't been enforced for over 3 years, so what would change? The business park entrance is 1 metre from our property. The unit in question operates 10 metres from our property. If your neighbour cuts his lawn, you can put up with the noise on the odd weekend, but every day, 14 hours a day from over 15 units, there are cars being revved up, industrial noise, lorries and deliveries from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m, 6 days a week. Where is our time to relax and enjoy our home? A further 20 units are planned for this site. We can't even have our windows open in the summer because of the noise. Policy D1 and the cumulative effect of noise was mentioned at the last meeting. We believe that a reasonable noise level has already been exceeded and would urge the council to reject this application, request totally unreasonable operating hours and remove our basic right to enjoy our home and garden.
Bennett, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to ward members. Wish to speak first, Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chairman. At some stage, I'd like members' recollections of why it was deferred last time. But for the moment, the B1 is a light use suitable in a residential area. This is a residential area. This must be the first thing that we look at, that it is a residential area. And ours are not suitable. These sort of hours are not suitable in a residential area. As the objector has just said, I think mentioned 14 hours. And this now is 6 days a week, not 5.5 days.
And bank holidays, because it doesn't exclude them.
Thank you for that elucidation, Chairman. What we've got is a situation where the conditions do not seem to be enforceable. And I think that the noise that's created by some of these uses, now I know somebody's going to tell me that we must only look at the unit that the application is for, which I accept, but the officer does use other units to make the case for recommending approval. So I don't see why we, as a planning committee, cannot use other evidence from the other units to support a rejection of the officer's recommendation. Again, we must remember we're looking at a rural area, not an urban area, where background noise may be higher than in a rural area. I think that I have great sympathy with the objector on this. So therefore, I will not actually vote on this because it may be determined that I've got a bias. I don't think I have, but so I will not vote on it. It is, I think, a case that I would support if the objector, and there is other residents there, made a case to the local government ombudsman, not on the decision, but the local planning authority's failure to deal with all the issues on this site. And as it's going to an inspector, can I ask that the local planning authority ask for a hearing to hear this appeal? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fluker. There's no other board member present.
Okay.
Passengers away.
Thank you, Chairman. Could we just go to the site plan, please? Chairman, my understanding is to the right of the site where that light green blob is, there's planning permission there for a very large bungalow. So you've actually got, you've actually got the properties on the main road, and then below that you've also got a residential development coming forward. I don't see anything mentioned in the report about that. But Chairman, I mean, we're beginning to understand quite clearly after Charwood the modus operandi of PINs, insofar as the fact that they listen to the recordings of these meetings now, and I'm pleased they do. So Chairman, mindful of that, I would ask that if this planning application was approved, there were additional conditions attached to protect the local residents. The first one being to protect the immunity of the local residents. When the premises are in use, all exterior doors and shutters are closed prior to any machinery being used and works carried out. I mean, that's solely for the purpose of protecting the amenity. And also, Chairman, given the difference of opinion over noise, I think that if we were determining this and we were minded to approve it, then I think we'd condition it to 2 years approval anyway. So I hope that's picked up by the officers, and I hope that's picked up by anybody else that might listen to this tape. But my main point is, Chairman, I'm sure that all of the members here tonight have read Mr. Kant's report to Ms. Tatsaglu. And just for your reference, dated the 7th of December 2021. This is a document that's on the website. Chairman, I hope you'll oblige me. These are the words of our Environmental Health Officer. Noise assessment submitted with this application is the same as the ones used for applications for other units in a different area of Red Lyons Business Park. I am not satisfied that it is adequately assesses the noise from Unit 10 at present, and we therefore can't know the impact of the proposed change of hours. I mean, to me, Chairman, that's pretty cut and dry. Had this assessment been submitted in respect to Unit 10 in isolation, and remember, these aren't my words, these are the Morton District Council Environmental Health Officer, I would particularly have questioned the selection of the monitoring position. I believe that further assessment specifically relating to unit number 10 is required. So I've read, Chairman, the applicant's noise survey from Sharps, a company called Sharps. I think about 80% of that tells you more about how they did it as opposed to what their outcomes were. And the only thing they seem to mention is about the noise a gate's going to make. So the officers have picked up on that, and in fact the Environmental Health Officer has said, well, if we were minded to approve it, then we should. And the officer nods, but you can't nod based on the first paragraph because the officer does not agree to this. There's no newer report. He doesn't support the way the noise assessment was done. And as far as enforcement, I think the officers quite right, Chairman, to say that we shouldn't take this into consideration, but I think it's also useful to see what the Environmental Health Officer says in his report, because he speaks to enforcement, he speaks to noise, and then he says, but they do help to provide some useful context. So what he's saying is, look, there's a load of enforcement on here about noise, and whilst you can't accept it from a planning point of view, they still provide a useful context when considering noise on the site. So, Chairman, I really don't get this, because when this was deferred, I was expecting, Chairman, to see a lot more information, more up-to-date information, Chairman. And as far as I remember, Chairman, I think that's what this committee asked for. Yet the latest document on there is from, I don't know, 4.5 months ago. So, Chairman, I genuinely don't believe that we can determine this. I agree with what Councillor Boyce says. I think that we should have... this shouldn't be done by an exchange of papers. We should actually have an inquiry. And I think we need to get to the bottom of this because, Chairman, from what the objector says, this is not right next to it. Whatever's gone on that site in the past, and if Mr. Lee was here tonight, he would say that all applications have to be dealt with on their own merits. Now, we've now got a situation where this site is going to be open from 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock. 6 days a week, bank holidays. It's not acceptable close to residential properties. I couldn't support it, Chairman, and And I would propose, Chairman, that if I don't know what we're doing here, I think it's all to do with mindfulness, looking at it.
What we will need to do at this stage is to make a decision as to what we would have done if we were making the final decision. So if you wish to approve it, you can approve it. If you wish to refuse it, you can refuse it. But that will go forward as a recommendation to the Planning Inspectorate.
Well, Chairman, I would say we've got a balance. We've got the Sharps survey noise impact assessment here, and we've got the environmental health, the Moorings District Council environmental health comments here. And I'm afraid that the two are different. And I think that based on ours, Chairman, what comes from Moorings District Council, I would refuse it. So I'm proposing that we refuse it.
Okay, is that seconded? That's seconded. Right, thank you. Before I move on, can I just say you came up with, if the inspector was to improve it, you suggested 2 conditions. I would like to see a third one added to that, that it should actually specify no working of this unit on a Sunday or bank holidays, because at the moment bank holidays, as far as I can tell, are completely excluded from the whole thing, which it seems to me quite extraordinary. But still, before I take any other members, Anna, do you wish to come back on?
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to come back to some of the points that Councillor Fluke raised. Just a little bit of background. When the application was originally submitted and we received comments from the Environmental Health Officer, there was no objection, similar to the response that we've received for other alterations to conditions for the other units within the Red Lyons farm. We've then sought further comments, in particular in relation to this unit, and then the comments that Councillor Fluke made reference to were received. So I obviously, yes, I agree that he raised concerns in relation to the impact, but his response carries on identifying how this could be addressed by the imposition of a condition. When I was doing the presentation earlier, I said that officers recommended approval subject to the conditions in the officer's report, which was within the appendix, plus the condition in the members' update, which was the condition suggested by the environmental health officer. And this had to do with the submission of a noise report assessing the impact from the site and the wider area. I think I've covered that. Also, just to clarify that we have sought from the applicant to submit a noise assessment as it was requested by the environmental health officer. So we would be able to present you at the following committee with more information in relation to the noise impact, but we've never received a response to that. And in relation to the conditions suggested, I believe if members would be minded to approve the application subject to the officer's recommendation, I think all 3 of those would be able to be added to secure residential amenity, all of those suggested. There are also others that relate to no use of machinery outside the site, no storage of materials outside, no installation of plants and equipment outside, and as well as illumination. So that could be an addition if you were minded to approve it. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I just clarify one point? In 4.2, if I've read it correctly, you identify the use as B2 general industrial of that unit, where the request is for says it as B1, which we don't believe it is.
Through you, Chairman, yes. In that section of the report, I've covered what the enforcement team is currently dealing with. Yes, you're right. The site benefits from permission to be used as B1, actually, e.g. 2 and 3, which is general industrial and how's it called? And also use as research and development. So this is their use that they have permission for. The enforcement team is dealing with a complaint where, I mean, obviously this will be dealt with separately, but from what we have as information at the moment, yes, we think that if actually the site is used as a tire and service, tire installation and services of vehicles, then yes, that would come under B2 use class rather than e.g. But this is a matter
conflict on the application itself, though, isn't it? Like
it is a matter that it has to be dealt with separately by enforcement if they do not comply with the condition, because there is a condition. The condition 1 from those imposed to this permission and previous permissions is to be used as e.g. 2 or 3.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens and Councillor Helm.
It's really a question for the officers. This, as I can understand it, this is an established small industrial site or light industrial site. And so I would agree with, so I just want confirmation of that. And secondly, yes, any restrictions that could be put on, I mean, I would be tempted, I would propose adding a restriction that there is no noise on the site before 8 o'clock and after 6 o'clock as well during the week, because that must be very disturbing to the people that live around. But first of all, this is an established site. There are plenty of units there, are there not?
Through you, Chairman, yes, it is an established site. It's not an existing employment site within the LDP, but yes, it's an established.
How long has it been established for?
We have applications definitely since 2001 to convert the use of the buildings, but I assume it's been operating before that. Yeah, long before that. I don't have the exact. Yeah.
Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could we put your light on, please?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. From my experience, the other end of the village, operating hours are 8 till 6, Monday to Friday, and 8 till 12 or 1 on Saturday. No working on Sundays, no working on bank holidays, and doors to be kept shut while working. What I would question also is the previous delegated decisions to allow them to go from 6 till 8 o'clock at night. Who on earth thought of that? Didn't they look at their area, what was going on? Or did they just decide that was all right?
Through you, Chairman, yeah, the previous delegated decisions were based on the consultation response received by the environmental health officer, who, based on the noise report submitted by SARB, found it acceptable, suggested that it was acceptable, subject to, as Councillor Flukier said earlier, a condition in relation to Yates.
Councillor Helm again.
Doing this, you set a precedent for all the industrial sites in the Dengie to operate from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. I don't do that, and I wouldn't do that, but other people would, and it would create hell with the neighbours.
Councillor Mr. Stan.
Chairman, mine's not so much a question, it's a comment in the fact that I've been living around a building site for noise that's been going on most probably 2-3 years. And I tell you something, by the time it comes to Saturday at 1 o'clock, you want some peace and blooming quiet, because all you hear is the drones of machinery, whatever type of machinery. And when I was also working from home, you can't sometimes hear when you're in a Teams meeting because of the noise. And I really feel sorry for the residents that are so close to that. And if they are changing tyres and they go, wee, them nut things, because they put them air machines in and they unscrew things really fast or whatever they're doing, and it's intolerable. And I certainly don't think we should be setting a precedent by saying you can operate till 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, because most people have got their kids, if they've got them in bed, and they want to sit down with a bit of peace and quiet, not be able to close their windows, not to go in their greenhouses. And I'm sorry, I think what this council are doing, the recommendation is not right. Thank you, Chair. It's not a comment, it's a question, it's a comment.
Councillor Skeens.
I'd just like to propose an amendment that says there's no operation
We have a proposal duly seconded to refuse the application.
Yeah, but
So if
I'm
that
saying
fails,
approve Okay.
Yeah, but no, you will have to hear this one first. This
Sure. So
this proposal has got to be dealt with first.
Yeah.
If it is dealt with and refused, then
well, can I?
it goes no further. But if otherwise, we'll come back to you on that.
All right. Okay.
Right. Councillor Fuller, do you wish to add anything, or can we move to a vote? Oh, Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Can you? I'm red. Oh,
Yeah, you're all right.
I'm meant to be red, aren't I? Yeah, sorry, I was thinking it was meant to be green. I don't know why.
I agree. It should be
Yeah.
green to go.
Chairman, can I just confirm that the officers, in the officers' report, talking about the conditions, it refers to section 8, and there's 7 conditions. And that's what you're recommending, if we were minded to approval, we go with? I mean, I've heard what the other conditions are tonight, but is that what officers' view is?
Through you, Chairman, the 7 plus the 8th one on the members' update. Yeah, the previous members' update, as I said in the presentation.
I know there's been that bit, but I
Yes.
would have expected to see that much clearer, possibly, rather than previously. And, you know, looking at the minutes, which I've got on my mobile here from the December meeting, members raised at that time concerns about human rights, and it was about the noise and the adverse impact the industrial site has on the neighbouring properties, and obviously this coming into the equation. I know you're going to tell us we mustn't think about the whole site. And it referred to the EH detailed information dealt with and how they considered there did need to be this specific noise assessment. And members did request actually further information, specifically on a number of matters, doesn't detail all those matters, which included noise and also the lawful use of the site. I'm concerned about the hours of operation. To me, they seem exceedingly long. And I think, like Councillor Helms pointed out, it does set a precedent, dare I say, that could be reflected elsewhere. So I feel very much like I think the committee did in December, if I'm frank, Chairman.
Councillor Boyce. No. Councillor Fluker, did you wish to?
Yeah,
add
just
anything?
just a couple of points for clarity. I mean, the obvious question to put to the officer is: would you like an impact wheel gun going off outside your house at 6 o'clock in the morning? But you're saying that I shouldn't ask
it
that.
myself.
But I mean, it's this is not Red Bull. This isn't 2.2 seconds and off they go. This is like 20 minutes to change these things. I don't feel very happy about this at all. But what I wanted to ask, Chairman, is in light of the appeal at Charwood. Chairman, my understanding is the council didn't actually defend that appeal, and by not defending it, and I appreciate that it was on paper, but by not defending it, they automatically become a hostile witness. So, Chairman, my question is will the officers provide another report to PINS based on the deliberations and the decisions of this committee?
I mean, again, each case should be considered on its own basis, but we officers support the council's decisions, but however, just to remind you again, this is not going to be our decision. This is going to be just what you would be minded to do. So we won't have any control. We will, as a council, we will make no decision. It would be just to inform the inspectorate what we would have done. So if you decide today to refuse the application, this is what we will inform the inspectorate. If you decide to, if you say that we would be minded to approve it, we will say that the council would be minded to approve it for that many reasons, subject to that many conditions. So it's not that we are to make a decision tonight.
It isn't a decision,
It
but
isn't a
you will
decision.
present any decision that is made tonight to the planning inspectorate as though it was a decision.
If there was
So
a
the
decision, yeah.
case will be made
Yeah.
of what this committee decides, and it will go forward to the planning inspectorate.
Yeah, would we be minded as a council to whether we would be minded to approve or refuse? Yes, we will do that. Yeah.
Right, I think, can we move on, because we're going to go around a little bit in circles. We've got a proposal duly seconded, the proposal by Councillor Fluker, duly seconded by Councillor Mrs Stamp, that to refuse the application for reasons of unreasonable hours of working with limited control, something along those lines. Is that correct? Loss of amenity. It's a semi-residential area, yeah. It's a problem with a mixed use, isn't it? Right, those in favour of refusal, please show. 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? 1. In that case, we will present this to the planning inspectorate as though the council have refused the application. Councillor Boyce.
Now that's concluded, can I propose that we request a hearing, if that's seconded?
Yeah. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I believe we certainly can request a hearing. I know it's the inspectorate's final decision, but
Yeah. I think we say it's actually in the public interest, because there's quite a bit of public that are extremely interested and affected by this, and I'm sure they'd like to make their case to the inspector.
Councillor Pfluger.
Chairman, bearing in mind what happened at Burnham Waters, would it not be prudent at this stage to say that the ward members are the lead members on this if there is a hearing? Thank you.
Is the ward member keen to do that? He has more time than this chairman.
I think somebody's being evil, but, if necessary. But I'm assuming that the objectors would be much better able to put their case than I would for them.
Okay, thank you. But I mean, if it's a hearing, it's a fairly non-critical thing, isn't it? It's not.
Sorry, in relation to the hearing, we might not be able to have a hearing because it's an appeal for non-determination. It's not an appeal against the decision of the council.
I'm being told that because the appeal is for non-determination, it may not be possible to have a hearing, but we can request it nevertheless, can't we?
We can investigate whether this is an option, but I doubt it because there isn't actually a decision that's been made by the council. So it's normally in terms of procedural matters rather than the decision itself. Yeah.
All right, we'll see where we go with that. Councillor Boyce.
And that also raises the issue of why we deferred it in the first place. Mrs. Channer has read out, I think, the minutes which indicate that we were expecting our officers to come back with further information. And if you remember, Chairman, we have, or several members have constantly been asking the officers where the information and why this hasn't come back to the committee.
3 meetings at least.
So that the appeal because of non-determination is actually the local planning authority's fault rather than the applicant.
Councillor Mrs. Stamp.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to be clear, why are we actually having to put a recommendation forward for refusal or approval if it's not going to be determined on that? Because it's going to be determined on whether the planning department here didn't non-determination. So I don't understand. It doesn't cross-pollinate, or whatever the word is to me, because you're asking us to decision and now you're saying it's not going to be taken forward. So why are we determining something, Chairman?
The decision must be taken. Our decision must be taken forward to the planning inspector, and the planning inspector will take that as part of his information that he uses or she uses in making a final determination. Well, that has always been the case every time this has happened in the past. Mr. Johnson.
Through you, Chair. The details we've received so far regarding the appeal is that one has been submitted, it's been checked for its validity, and the inspectorate are awaiting an appointed inspector. At that particular point, that's when the timetable process will then be engaged. Now, through that timetable process, they will send us a start letter. The start letter then sets out the procedure for the appeal. Now, it's within that point, that's when the council can then, go through the usual appeal process. So while I don't have the information in front of me, that may be the opportunity where we can then make our own suggestions as to what type of appeal we would like to be considered. But we don't have that start date yet, so we don't know when it's going to start. There is a backlog with the appeal. Things are taking quite some time. But that's the position of that at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, well, that I believe is what members were, asking. When we get the opportunity, we must make the application for what the committee decided on it.
Yeah, through you, Chairman, again. In relation to the point raised as to why we've been asked to say, why we were reminded to, because this is what the inspectorate asked us. They would ask us what we would be minded to do with the appeal. That's why we need to make that. Yeah, you need to vote on that tonight.
In effect, what you're doing is you're going back to last December and saying, if we'd made a determination, and this is what we would have done. And they could then have appealed anyway on our decision, but we now have a decision, not just a recommendation. Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Can I just get that qualified, Chair, or clarity on something rather? I mean, again, here it does say that when you've got an appeal going for non-determination, or rather if there's a non-determination, it seems to be the procedures for this are similar to those which apply when an application has been refused. Does that mean it's the applicant's right to determine the route they want to go, or the authority can as well?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. Both sides are given the opportunity to put forward the type of appeal that they want. Yeah. The decision ultimately will be with the inspectorate. The inspectorate may feel that, looking at the nature of the case, the interest involved, they feel it would either be for written reps, for a hearing, or public inquiry, whatever it might be. Yeah, it's just that we give our side. The fact that the appellant has said in their appeal application, and that's all it is. It's just the application. Yeah. They want it as written reps. That doesn't mean it will be a written reps appeal. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, members, can we move on? Thank you.
We're going to make that request then, Chairman.
Sorry?
We'll make that request on the part of the authority. What
That
Councillor Boyd
request will
wanted.
be made that it will be for a hearing.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
So we confirm the written refusal is due to the impact.
The noise impact on the residential properties nearby. The unreasonable noise impact because of the hours as much as anything. I mean, I think that's, everybody has agreed on that. Between 8 a.m. and 6 a.m. is one thing, but before 8 a.m. and after 6 p.m. is another thing. And I mean, somebody who has my own industrial use of making my own amount of noise, and I sympathise entirely with neighbours. So, okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Right. Thank you very much. Right, members, we'll move on. Agenda item 6, Sunnyside, Stoney Hills, Burnham-on-Crouch. It's the proposal is to demolish an existing house and ancillary structures and the erection of 2 new dwellings. There's a recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Chairman. So, yes, that's it. The application site is located outside the development boundaries of Burnham-on-Crouch, towards the western side of the area known as Stoney Hills. The site is known as Sunnyside, and it currently comprises a detached bungalow, as you can see on those plans, with a detached garage. So these are the elevations of the existing bungalow and the floor plans. And planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing bungalow and the erection of 2 3-bedroom chalet-style dwellings. And here are the plans. This is the block plan, elevations, floor plans, and the roof plan. They're actually handed, so there isn't much of a difference between the 2 plots. Again, floor plans and the roof plan. This is the street scene elevation. Here, existing proposed, and these are some photographs. This is the existing bungalow on the side. Here is the garage, detached garage. This is the neighbouring property to the north. Here is the view from the road. There is development behind this hedgerow, development. The application side, you can just barely see it here, and Fairview is down to the south. So the proposed development has been assessed against the policies of the LDP and has taken into account all material planning considerations, including the previous permissions and appeals for similar residential development allowed within the area of Stoney Hills. On this basis, it is considered that the principle of erecting 2 dwellings within the area of Stoney Hills is acceptable. Having regard to the established character of the surrounding area, the proposal would not have, it is not considered that it would have a discordant impact to the character of the area or the intrinsic beauty of the surrounding countryside. Following the publication of the officer's report, further comments from the environmental health team were received, highlighting the need for a pre-commencement condition ensuring the investigation and risk submission of an investigation and risk assessment in terms of the contamination. And this is set out within the members' update. An agreement to the suggested pre-commencement conditions was thereafter received after the publication of the members' update. Furthermore, it is noted that conditions in relation to ecology mitigation and enhancement measures, as well as one for the installation of a sensitive lighting scheme, have been suggested by the ecology consultant, which are also considered reasonable to be imposed. So officers recommend approval of the application, subject to the conditions on pages 46 to 48 in the agenda. The additional condition on page 4 of the members' update, as well as the 3 suggested conditions by the ecology consultant.
Thank you very much. Before I move on to members, we have one person who has registered to speak remotely via Teams, and that's the agent, Mr. Tony Cousin. You have, Mr. Cousin, you have 2 minutes, as I'm sure you already know. You look like you're in a cave. It's very, very dark.
Turn around.
Light in the background.
Yeah, you need to have the light falling on your face. So.
Oh, lovely.
Chairman, I'm more interested in what Mr. Cousins has got to say.
Come
not
on,
what
we
he
have 2
looks like.
minutes when you start.
Balanced and very positive report, recommending approval. There's a couple of minor discrepancies or inaccuracies I'd just like to pick up. Paragraph 5.1.4 on page 37 still describing Stoney Hills Road as a unmade track. Fact is that the road from Mill Road up to the point where it enters Charles Estate has been fully serviced now since I think around about 2019. And in March this year, the remainder of the road was fully tarmac surfaced from the point where it meets Mill Road right up to the end of the cul-de-sac at Fairview, or Fairview beyond the application site. So that's just a minor inaccuracy. And also, paragraph 5.4.5, I believe it is, page 41, says that the dwellings behind haven't yet been built out. They have in fact been built out, Chairman and members, and they've been occupied by the owners since I think around about Christmas last year. These are really minor points, but for sake of accuracy, and there's been a lot of historic issues surrounding the road, I thought it was worthy of mention. With that, with the report recommending approval, I won't maybe walk any further. Just respectfully ask members that they fully support the application and grant planning permission tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cousin. Councillor Mrs. Challow.
Thank you, Chairman.
Should have been Burnham members first, but
Well, no, I'm not going to comment on the application, Chair. I'm actually not going to partake in this because I've just studied the surrounding area and Mr. Cousins has mentioned the name of the property. And even though I looked at the site, I'd rather not because the property next door, I have been acquainted, I believe, with that person, well, the person's next door, and I'd rather not participate in now this application, bearing in mind, and I put it, an event that occurred. So thank you.
okay, thank you, Councillor Challow. Right, Burnham members, who's first? Councillor Mrs. Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask the officers, hasn't a recent application on Stoney Hills just been a recommended refusal from the officers, please? Can I have clarity on that before I speak any further?
Sorry, if there was a refusal.
It was recommended for refusal. Do you know what the site was?
Can't remember, but I know when I saw it, I thought, my goodness.
Oh, through you, Chairman. You might actually refer to one that I dealt with before I went. So you might be referring to the one on behind Sunnyside, two bungalows behind Sunnyside, but that was allowed on appeal. If that's the one that you're referring to, there was one appeal. There was one application which was refused to demolish the. Actually, not demolish, to erect two bungalows at the back. That was back in 2016, and that was dismissed on appeal. And there was a following one for two bungalows at the back of Sunnyside, which was allowed on appeal. And then after that, and according to the officer's report, there was another one to build 4 houses at the back of Hillside and Sunnyside, which was also approved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But I wish I'd have remembered to write it down because I can remember reading it, and I'm sure it's only recently that an officer's recommendation to refuse property. Anyway, Chairman, let's move on. I actually had a quite a good chat with the bin lorry people, Suez, the other day, and sorry, they have a real torrid time trying to collect up there now. And I know you're going to say it's not reasons for planning refusals, but to me it's sustainability. You're putting more and more houses up there. You're supposed to be saying, we're working within the parameters of the facilities in Burnham-on-Crouch, but what are we up to there now? How many houses have we got on Stoney Hills? My post bag is still constantly full of people who are complaining on Mill Road. I walked down there the other day because I always used to do it when I was the mayor. I'd drive around to see what was going on. I don't even go down Stoney Hills very often now because you can't turn round. I've got horrible gas guzzlers, so Councillor Fluke, before he says anything to me. So I can hardly turn round when I get down there. There's no passing places unless you go onto people's frontage, because, we've heard of all the instances down there. And I just think it's yet again more houses in an area that I still feel, you can argue with me as much as you like, I don't really mind. My view is, I still think it's not sustainable. I think putting more houses up there, that road is classed as an unclassified road, regardless of whether it's tarmacked or not. It's not supported by the highways. There's no footpaths or pavements. It's not safe for the kiddies to walk to school. You have got people who's moved into those houses and they've got 3-4 children and they're complaining all the time. They've got nowhere to step out of the way when the traffic's going up there. And yes, it may not be a planning reason for refusal, Chairman, but it's a fact of life at Stoney Hills. And we have got a duty of care to our residents. If we keep granting planning permissions, get some footpaths down there. Get something so they can walk there. Get some joining from the side at the back, going to out the back way. There's a footpath. It's covered in brambles and briars. You can't get anywhere from there unless you go via Mill Road. We've got problems with speeding. We've got problems where the lorries are actually knocking down electricity pylons, where they, telegraph electricity pylons, where people are having power outages for at least 12 hours. Yeah, and okay, you can say it's a rare occasion, Chairman, but when they go down, I'm telling you something, my email is full of complaints. Now, I'm more than happy, if it happens again, to forward it on to the officers, Chairman. They're my reasons. Whether you think they're valid planning ones is a different matter.
I But bearing in mind that we've got government inspectors who said that the area is sustainable, I don't think that would stack up for long. So we need to be very careful about making a decision on those grounds. Councillor Skeens.
I have to second what Councillor Stamp is saying. The road has been unsuitable ever since planning started down here. Everybody says it's not a planning reason. I can't think of a more important planning reason than accessibility. There are no footpaths, there's no lighting, the road is, yes, at the moment it's made up, but it's not as made up by Essex County Council, so it could become unmade up. It's just wrong, and the whole town thinks it's wrong.
Right. Councillor Mrs. Hall.
Thank you. It looks like we will lose if we do say no anyway, but that, I think Councillor Stamp's right. If we are going to have to do it, there's footpaths in there, and especially bridleways. It's part of our country bit that we used to ride over. We've got nothing. So if we're going to have to lose it, which we most probably will when it went to appeal, can we put down that we have these other amenities at least? That's without the doctors and all the schools that haven't got enough places.
Problem that we have is we've got to come up with reasons that the inspector will support. At the very least, we run the risk of having costs against us if we do make a decision to refuse that that an inspector thinks is unreasonable because other inspectors have said, for instance, it is a sustainable site. So we do need to be very mindful how we make any decision to refuse on this.
That's the trouble. But if we can say, we stipulate these other things, perhaps, at least we can meet halfway.
We need to be able to produce the evidence. County Highways will not support us on it, and they are the highways professionals. And say for sustainability, it's other inspectors have said it's sustainable. So you cannot fight that information from other professional bodies unless we are willing to spend huge sums of money finding our own professional bodies to counter claim it, and the costs just do not stack up on that. Councillor.
Chairman, just before Councillor Fluker comes in, can I just say I have tried to get Essex County Council to adopt that, and there's no way they will do it. I had quite a lot of residents write to me and ask if there was any possibility that we could improve that, because it is what it is. We know it's a massive development now, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we should be trying, and I did try to get the road adopted and get some lighting, etc., to try and make it more livable in this day and age, as far as I'm concerned, and acceptable. But Essex County Council won't do it.
No, the County Council will not adopt anything of that sort these days. But it would cost them huge sums of money to do so, and they would not be willing to get involved in that. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, look, this is, I'm surprised Councillor Stamp hasn't used my famous words. I know, I just looked online for an alternative, but, there isn't one, so I'm not going to say. Chairman, look, my first question is in relation to 5.4.5, because I'm minded of an appeal that I've read recently where a planning inspector criticises members for not going to look at planning application sites. So, I mean, I've pretty much done it all the time. To make an informed decision, you really need to go to the site. And I did actually go to the site the other day and have a look, and I did notice that the houses behind are actually occupied, yet the report says that they haven't come forward yet. So perhaps the officer can confirm before I ask another question. Did an officer attend this site?
Through you, Chairman. Yes, as far as I'm aware, I'm not the case officer of this application, but I have had confirmation this morning from the officer that she carried out a site visit, and these are the photographs from the site visit, and that they were not, the houses were not built. But as I say, I wasn't the case officer, so I didn't personally carry out the site visit.
Okay, thank you. So, Chairman, I hear what the members say, and I hear about the footpaths, and I can remember Stoney Hills as, as a teenager, and we all know how much it's changed. And I mean, it has been said before in this committee that it was this committee actually that started all this development there. But can I just remind everybody that Murray Fields, which was the first development there, there was actually granted permission by the planning inspector. So, Chairman, look, the officer's report refers to all the previous planning inspector decisions. It is a sustainable location. I hear what you say about roads, footpath, lights and everything else, but it is very much a lifestyle choice for people that want to buy houses there. You know, these aren't planning reasons. And I'm also mindful of what Mr. Kenman, the Secretary of State's Planning Inspectorate, Mr. Kenman Lane said about members of this council manufacturing reasons for refusing planning applications. And Chairman, we need to be very, very careful. I think the officer's report is right. And that said, Chairman, I would propose that we agree the officer's recommendation because there are no planning reasons to turn this down.
I mean, the point is, I mean, surely, I mean, we've heard from Burnham members that residents down there are upset because there's no footpaths, there's no this, there's no street lights, there's no that. Nobody's forced anyone to go and live down there. They make that decision themselves, a very commercial decision to spend a huge amount of money to go and live down there. It's too late to complain after the event. Councillor Helm.
I was going to second.
As you second it, right, okay. Is there anybody else wish to speak on that? In that case, we have a proposal from Councillor Fluker, duly seconded by Councillor Helm, to, Councillor Boyce, to agree the officer's recommendation to approve for the reasons given and for the conditions at the back. Those in favour of that, please show. Are those against? Okay, 5-2, so that is approved. Thank you, members. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the old clubhouse, the Quay, Burnham-on-Crouch, variation of condition on plans and approved application. Mr. Johnson, I believe this one's yours.
I'll be reading it.
Okay. You've taken responsibility for it.
So just excuse me for filling with the presentation. I'm not used to doing this.
I think it's been confiscated. You can't.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Chairman. If we can go to the
Next one.
the initial page, just to. Thank you, Chairman. Members may well recall this application, which was considered previously. The single development issue on this site is the installation of railings. And I think if we just go straight to the drawings, because the matter just concerns a change in the railing type, and that is what is effectively before members. So if we can just scroll down, scroll down again, please. Right, there should be. Right. Okay. This drawing here, and members would have seen it in the presentation that was circulated, shows the proposed railings. They are of a different style to that which was considered previously and rejected by members, different in terms of its style and different in terms of its height. It is of a much reduced scale, practically half the size of the previous proposed railings. And that is effectively what is in front of members today. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 2 people wishing to speak in person on this tonight. The first is supporter Miss Diana Bailey. Miss Bailey, if you can come forward to a microphone.
Thank you.
And when you're ready, you have 2 minutes from the time you start speaking.
Thank you. Do I have to press a button?
Let's say start.
Okay. Diana Bailey, owner of the adjacent building, the Otter Hut, and previous objector. All I really wanted to say tonight was how grateful I am to see our neighbours, the applicant, have taken on board our concerns by showing a lower height railing and propose a more transparent solution. We very much hope that there will be an almost uninterrupted view of the Otterhart west elevation from the quay. And I also wanted just to reiterate 100% with the Conservation Officer by requesting large-scale drawings of the proposed railing illustrating dimensions of the individual components and finer details in order to show a sensitive design and construction of the railings and how it abuts to the Otterhart. It should be noted in future we will need access for maintenance, therefore adequate space must be allowed between the end of the railings and the Otterhart. Thank you.
Very much. And we have a second speaker, which is the agent, Mr. Chris Ragg. Ragg, if you'd like to take your place at the microphone. As before, you have 2 minutes from the time you start speaking.
Good evening. Like it's been said, you may recall the previous version of this application, which was heard by this committee. The application sought a railing above the seawall to protect the public from the dangers of the slipway and the applicant's new high voltage slipway equipment, whilst protecting the expensive equipment from any potential trespassers. The railing proposed at the time was 1.1 metres higher than the seawall and some 2.4 metres higher than the ground level. Height drew criticism from the planning committee and was subsequently refused. So if I can be so bold to loosely quote what was said during the meeting, it was too high and should be significantly lower, and if I recall, suggested 2 feet lower. It should be a maximum of 1.8 metres higher from the ground level, not the 2.4, and it was suggested that the design of the railing needed to be reviewed. Instead of appealing that decision, we listened to the comments and are keen to provide a sensitive design that adds to the character whilst protecting the public and the new slipway equipment. Therefore, we have reduced the height of the railing by 2 feet, and it now peaks at 1.8 metres above the ground level, although it's lower in places. And we have changed the design to tell one of the fascinating stories of the town's history, the Vanguard Restoration Foundation charity, which aims to bring back to life the Dunkirk little ship, which set sail from Burnham-on-Crouch to rescue survivors from the beaches of Dunkirk, a project that the applicant is heavily involved in. The design of the railing depicts the Dunkirk little ship and will be crafted by one of the last remaining master blacksmiths in Essex. Tim Howson, the Council's Heritage Officer, has supported the proposal, and as just suggested, the large-scale drawings of by condition is welcomed. Suitable permits will be obtained by the EA to ensure that the railings will be erected without compromising the
Your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Dunkirk little ships.
I'm going for it.
Right, Burnham members.
It's your ward, Councillor Scoons, you can go.
Okay, well, very briefly, last time this came up, I wasn't at the debate and wouldn't have taken part in it because I've been involved in the whole public debate. This time round, I've not talked to anybody about it, and I think that these railings are fine. I have to also declare that I'm also a trustee of the Vanguard Restoration Trust, so therefore I must be careful what I say. But I like the idea. I'm bound to, I guess. But I have no objections, and I'm delighted to hear that the neighbour also has no objections.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Stanley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd actually like to congratulate them that they actually went away rather than go to appeal. It's really nice when people engage within the community. I know not everybody will be pleased about having railings, but I actually would like to make a suggestion. When you speak to the Environment Agency, can you ask them to match what you're putting up for the stuff that they've already put up along our quay? It might actually then go in tandem and look quite nice. I actually do support this application, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Fluker.
Shame not to. Yeah, Chairman, look, I don't have any problems with this at all. And I think the new owners of this who took this property, I think over from Harry Tribe, clearly they've really turned this into quite something, and I think they should be commended for that. And I think the railings are right and proper for a variety of reasons, including planning. But I think that Mrs. Lewis alluded to a point that and I'm sorry, I just flicked through the conditions. I didn't see it, but maybe the officer perhaps can guide me. You'll enjoy that. About whether or not we can have a condition whereby the final design of the railings is signed off by our conservation officer. I can hear someone saying yes.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear, but just repeat what you asked, Councillor Fluker.
So, with regards to the railings, can we have a condition in there to say that the final design of the railings are to be signed off by our conservation officer?
Through you, Chair, just give me 1 second, please. Just
Top of my head, I would think it would have to, because say it could be to the satisfaction of the conservation officer. I don't think we can ask the conservation officer in effect to design it.
through you, Chair. While there's not a sign-off process as such, details as received will be reviewed by the conservation officer, and officers will have due regard to the recommendations of the conservation officer.
I'm sure Mrs. Lewis will write to him. So,
Any other members?
and I propose we approve it as per the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, but I think Councillor Mrs. Stamp has already basically suggested the same thing, but okay. Any other members? In that case, those in favour of approving the application as per officer recommendation? Any against? In that case, it is approved. Thank you, members. Agenda item 8. The Moorings, Seaview Parade, St Lawrence, single-storey rear extensions, two-storey rear extension and first floor additions to the front and rear. There's a recommendation to refuse for the reasons as detailed in section 8 of this report.
Hello, I'd just like to make the members aware of a change. There was an error in the report with regards to the reason of refusal. It was worded incorrectly, an administrative error. It should have read the proposed development, due to its location, size, height and design, would be an unsympathetic and incongruous addition to the existing dwelling, which would harm the character and the appearance of the host dwelling and the surrounding area, contrary to policies D1 and H4 of the Morden District Local Development Plan and the guidance contained within the National Planning Policy Framework. Okay. So the Moorings is this application seeks householder planning permission for a single-storey rear extensions, two-storey rear extension, and first floor additions to the front and rear. The application site is located on the northeastern side of Seaview Parade and is located within the settlement boundary of St Lawrence. The site is occupied by a detached bungalow. This application is a resubmission of a previously refused application. The submitted scheme has been altered by the reduction in the ridge height by 0.6 metres, together with a reduction in the height of the first floor extension to the front elevation by 0.2 metres. All other proposed works remain the same. This is the location of the property within Seaview Parade. This is the site plan, which shows the proposed works. These are the existing and proposed side elevations. The existing and front rear elevations. This is the proposed front and rear elevations. And these are the existing and proposed side elevations from the previously refused scheme. These are the proposed front and rear elevations from the previously refused scheme. This is the existing ground floor and roof plan. The proposed ground floor plan. The proposed ground floor plan from the previously refused scheme. The proposed roof and first floor plan. Proposed roof and first floor plan from the previously refused scheme. The proposed sections and the proposed sections from the previously refused scheme. That's the last one. This is a view from the entrance of Seaview Parade. So at the very start. This is a view at the end of Seaview Parade outside of Water's Edge. This is the views of the application site from within various parts of Seaview Parade. The application site is here, over here in this photo, here and here. There were some more views from the opposite side of the entrance of the way. This is a photo of the site from the rear of the garden. So we have the application site here, the neighbouring property Colonsay, and the neighbouring property Happy Days. This is a view from the back of the property facing the neighbouring property at Colonsay and facing the neighbouring property Happy Days. And these are some of the various other house styles that are within Seaview Parade. This is within Seaview Parade. This is in the road behind. The back's on Seaview Parade. This is a view down Seaview Parade. We can see Waterside Sports Centre at the end. This is leading out of Seaview Parade. And this is a view from Wick Farm Road, looking in, and this is the entrance of Seaview Parade, and this is where the site notice was positioned for this application. That was it. So it's concluded that the proposed first floor additions, by reason of their location, size, height and design, would be an incongruous and dominant addition which would harm the character and appearance of the dwelling and the surrounding area. The amendments to the scheme are not considered to be of such extent as to reduce the scale of the development or improve the design to such a degree as to have overcome the reasons for refusal stated above. It is therefore considered that the proposed development is not in accordance with the relevant policies contained within the LDP.
Thank you. We have one person wishing to speak on this, and this is the agent, Mr. Michael Lewis. Mr. Lewis, you know the rules. You have 2 minutes from the time you start speaking. Give us a moment to set the timer up. That's it.
Seaview Parade is a secluded cul-de-sac in which the homes facing northeast all enjoy unprecedented views across St Lawrence Bay. They've been variously extended since their construction in the 1930s, and many already have roof space accommodation added, including those either side of the moorings. This application is a resubmission of the earlier scheme refused by reason of its location, size, height, design being incongruous and dominant, harming the character and appearance of the dwelling and the surrounding area. The scheme has responded by reducing the raised ridge height by just 2 feet above the existing ridge, and by simplifying the roof to the rear. Officers have stated they're happy with the ground floor extension, and all the new first floor accommodation is now entirely within the pitched roof space. The original house has already been much adapted with multiple extensions, leaving little clue of the original form. The effect has been to create a complicated arrangement of multiple gable ends facing front and rear, and eaves at varying levels. The design intention is to retain as far as possible the front elevation. The curve in Seaview Parade and neighbouring buildings and existing boundary treatments means there's no distant view of the house. The modest 2 feet raising of the main ridge would be barely perceptible with the line of sight from the road raised by less than 2 degrees. Other than the dormer window to the front, the extension works proposed would be entirely private to the rear and invisible in the public realm. There'd be no adverse effect on the neighbours' privacy or overlooking. There have been no public objections, and it's supported by the parish council. We believe this is a scheme that's comfortable in its setting, with no ill effect on the street scene or the character of the neighbourhood. The applicant, as a young and growing family, is currently required to work from home. Approval of this scheme would provide the necessary space to enable him and his family to remain in the house they love.
Mr. Lewis, your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Just a matter of clarity before we start. Can the officer confirm that this is a conservation area?
No, I think the recommendation has been changed, because loaded that myself. Is that correct? There isn't a conservation of it.
Yes, through you, Chair, that was yes, that's correct. The reason for refusal stated in the agenda is incorrect, and it's not within a conservation area.
Board members, Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Having seen the officer's report and obviously the previous application, now I called this to committee because obviously I was aware of that. I was aware of the parish council support actually on both occasions, and I have to say, Chairman, I have actually been out. I didn't go on the site. I have been. I mean, I know the area, but I go and refresh my memory. And I have walked around. I think it's a bit of a shame, with all honesty, that we haven't actually got a photograph of the property Water's Edge, which is actually, I know we've seen next door, but actually the officer did refer to it and took a photo standing outside Water's Edge. But somewhat of a pity we haven't actually got a photo, because Water's Edge is quite a significant, substantial dwelling of 2 floors. And actually it has dormer windows, which are right on a boundary, which overlook actually the Stone Sailing Club ground. And also, if you walk along the beach at the back, yes, there's quite a high rise going up to the gardens, but you can see Water's Edge does have actually 2 floors, because they've got the lovely window where obviously they like to look over the wonderful view of St. Lyons. The agent has pointed out some points which I think are very, very important. I have to say I feel the officer, and I'm going to say this, I know the agent here, was correct in the refusal of the first design. However, I have to say I do differ in that I do feel the mitigations that have been applied in terms of the ridge height and reductions thereof, and the actual mitigation that has now occurred due to the design put before us. And if you look at the proposal that's on the table now and what was before, I think there has been quite a significant improvement. St. Lawrence is an area, I'm sure members will know, of a multitude of different designs all over. And Seaview Parade itself is not alone. In fact, one of the other dwellings has a quite high ridge height, which the officer sort of pointed out. And there's no projection in front of the house, actually. I think the officer's report referred to a projection in front of the property. From what I can see, that's not the case at all. The extension, there's nothing, the dormer window coming forward is not going to project forward. You can see actually you should be able to see an existing roof height, I think. Have you got something showing that? Yes. Now, and then can you show with the refusal? That's quite a good one, actually. Can you show the refusal that you refused? Yeah. And now show what's proposed. And yeah. And to go through the proposal, when you compare the two, to me, what is on the table now is much better. And hearing about the ridge height reductions, or just slightly above the existing ridge height, and that actually won't be visible from the roadway as such. In terms of the extension's mostly at the rear, and so the ridge height is just there, but you're not going to see a great big ridge height sticking in front of you. And I've stood exactly at the points where the officer's been. I've walked right round both ways. I've been right down to the beach and going round the back. But as I say, it's a pity we haven't got a photo of Water's Edge, because that's quite a significant dwelling, 2-storey, with dormer windows and with a viewing area at the back. I mean, it's a habitable room. So, Chairman, I have to say, on balance, and hearing the officer's view, I actually do now support the application as it is. And I do agree with the parish council's view on this, and they were supportive of it, as I say, on both occasions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Helm, do you wish to contribute?
I did, but Councillor Channer's taken the steam out of my wing. She said everything I would have said.
Well, it'll save some time then, won't it? But you need to switch your microphone on, Councillor Helm. Microphone, Councillor.
I have no problem with this application at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. A little bit disappointing that maybe the agent didn't supply a rendering looking from the river, but I sail past here a lot, and
Could have photographed it.
Well, I could have done, but when I saw Mr. Lewis was dealing with this, I thought, well, and he knows how fond I am of Anchor Cottage. I was concerned, and I can hear him laughing. But in Tinox Lane, I don't know how it's happened. We've got some ghastly looking buildings there from the river, But as far as this one's concerned, Chairman, and I don't have a problem with it. I think it will sit in perfectly from the river. And I think it's so important that when we've got developments that are looking across the river, and I'm sure there'll be others come forward like this, you know, perhaps the agents should be encouraged to provide some renderings or some shots from the river, because it is important. And I mean, given the shyness of the two ward members, Chairman, I'll propose, Chairman, that contrary to the members, the officer's recommendation to refuse, I propose, Chairman, that we do approve this on the grounds that it is subjective. You know, we know it's subjective, and you have your views and the members have their views. But, Chairman, I think that it does meet the criteria of Local Development Plan Policy D1, and it does fit in with its surroundings, Chairman.
I'm not sure that Councillor Mrs. Chandler said it in so many words, but I did understand that she was all in favour of it.
No, I didn't say it, Chairman. I was letting other members by. I think you knew my view, and it was coming. So I thank Councillor Fluker for saying the ward members are shy. No, we're not shy. And we would have liked the other opportunity to come back when the other members had perhaps given a view, and I'm sure we would have proposed and seconded. I will propose. That's where I was coming from. I indicated. Yeah.
Before we move on, Mr. Johnson wishes to say something.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Just a point of clarification on one of Councillor Chandler's comments. In the officer's report, where it talks about projections, it wasn't projections in front of the building. It's a projection into the roof. That's the point that was being made.
Oh, sorry. Then I misread that, because it read as that was projecting forward.
Yeah. Just to be clear, officer had no objection, as the agent pointed out, with the extensions around the ground floor, the objections, and really there's no concerns about elements in the roof. Yeah. There's the main thing which was pointed out, particularly in 5.2.6, was the extension of the rendering from the ground floor into the roof, and in officers' view that led to a lack of cohesion. So that was the point that was being made by officers. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. I mean, I would say the officer's report didn't seem to have too many negatives about. There was nothing to do with residential loss of amenity either side. It's such a vast site. The Article 4 couldn't be applied at all. That had no influence there. And it just seemed to be the officer considered it was incongruous. I agree with the first refusal, as I said, when I've studied these plans, obviously online, as you can do. And I do agree with the officer there. However, as I said, on balance, I feel that what's been done to bring this forward with the improvements that have been made, in my view, then I can see in my eyes that it should be approved. So I will propose, in case I didn't make it clear. Thank you.
Right, members. Anybody wishes to discuss this any further? No. Otherwise, we have a proposal. We have a proposal duly seconded, and you can decide between yourselves who did it. A proposal duly seconded to overturn the officer recommendation to refuse and to approve the application. Now, for what reasons, please?
Well,
Councillor Fluker proposed it, so he's got to give the reasons.
Yeah.
So, Chairman, as far as
Councillor Fluker.
And that the design, size and scale and bulk, which is referenced in policy D1, you know, that criteria is met, Chairman, and therefore it is acceptable. Thank you.
I mean, I want the normal conditions, Chairman, obviously, because we have to show that. But I think, you know, in fact, there was reference made to some of the materials, but I think for condition-wise, I think we have the normal conditions.
Conditions as per normal, but the reason is because the committee believes that it will fit well in the street scene and the river scene.
Yeah. And that it has overcome the previous reasons of refusal. I do think that's what it's done.
Mr. Johnson.
Through you, Chair, just for a point of clarification, and Councillor Fluker, are we relying on just D1 or is D1 and H4?
H4.
I mean, I think the thing about D1 and H4, you can use them to refuse and approve. So it's Yes.
Right.
I think
members-
I called it in on,
members,
the, on
those
that
in favour of
basis.
that proposal, please show. There's no one against, so in that case, that is agreed. Thank you. Before I move on, has anybody got anything they wish to add? No? Right, in that case, agenda item 9, any other items of business the chairman of the committee decides are urgent. I have none. Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, first of all, and can I apologise to all the members here, because we should congratulate you back into your rightful elevation as the chairman of this committee. So well done.
Oh, I wouldn't.
Whoa. But Chairman, can I say that bearing in mind the previous chairman refused to have a meeting with an informal meeting with officers regarding enforcement within the southeastern area, can I ask you to consider that request?
Yes.
And hopefully bring it forward? Thank
Well,
you.
Mr. Johnson is here. He's hopefully listening. Yes, we do. The committee has decided that before. We do wish to have some form of meeting to discuss the horrific enforcement list.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. I mean, just through that, obviously this has been mentioned before. There is deliberations amongst us on how communication on enforcement matters, and discussing it with members can be taken forward.
Right, I was going to close the meeting at 9 o'clock, but you've moved on, so it's now 9:01. I close the meeting. Thank you, members and members of the public.